Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It is absolutely beautiful over here. It's in the late afternoon. I've got a drink in my hand, and it's wonderful. I'm looking out my back window, and I'm watching the construction of my second warehouse. You know, it's what I've always dreamed of. I got to move out of California, or what a privilege that was to get the hell out of that state. And I bought a piece of property in the Midwest and been constructing and building houses and things ever since. It really is quite amazing, and I am blessed beyond belief to be up here. But I figured, with a couple of drinks in me and some time to myself this weekend, I wanted to talk about Amazon and the rings of power, because I think this is an interesting conversation. I think it's an interesting topic. So, the whole thing about this that really makes me laugh is the fact that Amazon has more money than they know what to do with. They have the ability to hire anyone. They could pick anyone they wanted, not just for the directorship, but also the writers, the cast. They could pick anyone in Hollywood. And yet, the people they choose are relatively unknown people, and those who do not have the experience or knowledge of Lord of the Rings to do what they're asking to be done. But they're willing to pour in millions and millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars into this to acquire it and to create it. But they don't have even the most basic of common sense to pick people and to do things that are going to attract the audience and not repel them away. Well, it appears that they are content to just make something. Doesn't matter the quality, doesn't matter what it is. They just want to make something. And I think that that's such a waste, because there's a golden opportunity for Amazon. With the money and influence they have, they could set a new standard for entertainment. The first thing that I would do is I would go to Peter Jackson or anyone even associated with the original Lord of the Rings, and I would try to get as many people on board as possible. Not even as their original roles, and Peter Jackson not even as a director if he doesn't want to be. Simply as a consultant. And do you know why I would do that? Do you know why I would pay millions of dollars for that? Because the headlines would read, Peter Jackson signs on to Amazon Lord of the Rings. And that right there is confidence. And confidence, especially in the early stages of a project, is priceless. It is so important to get people invested in your franchise, in your idea early on. And bringing in Peter Jackson or bringing in people that know the material, it is so crucial. The other thing is to play it as close to the vest as possible. I would have released certain trailers in a different way. Voiceovers, sweeping landscapes, music that we all know. Make it really sort of mysterious and abstract. Don't show the different races. I mean, you can show creatures, like different creatures, but don't show any of the elves. Don't show any of the dwarves. Don't show anything. Because if your idea is that you're going to absolutely take a steaming dump on Tolkien's legacy and his descriptions, at least save that for when they've invested themselves enough to actually watch the project. But you see, you have people that are working at Amazon that are so cocooned in their own so-called truth and worldview that they don't even understand that most people think that they're weird and disgusting and don't want anything to do with them. They don't want their ideas about gender and race and sexual orientation just blasted out into these franchises. And it's not because they have anything against them. It's not because people are racist or homophobic. They just want an authentic, true experience. They want to be able to separate themselves from our world and to be able to immerse themselves. One of the things about escapism is that there are hints of our world in there, of course, in the way characters interact, in the way that the world is built, but it's not our world. And to make it like our world is to diminish it, is to snuff out the spark of creativity and make it more like the mundane. The elves in Lord of the Rings have a description. So to have one of them be black could make sense if you told that as part of a story. If you explained it, gave it a backstory, let it breathe and let it sit with the fans. If you have this elf who's half elf, half human, an elf who, pure white, that type of ethereal, otherworldly beauties, that sort of look that we all know elves to be, had a relationship with a black man who was a human, a blacksmith, whatever you want to call it. That is an explanation for a character that looks like an elf and is black. You can do everything that you want to do. You can do every change that you want to make. But you see, these people are so arrogant that they skip over any of the build-up, any of the quality writing, and just get to that end part because they don't care about any of the rest. And that is a huge waste. Because by this point, we should have some of the coolest, most dynamic black and female characters that anyone has ever seen. And yet we don't. We had better characters, better female representation, a better black representation when I was growing up. You see, when I was growing up, we had movies like Blade. And Blade, let me tell you something. Blade was the coolest superhero of all time. Not only did he look cool, and was he Wesley Snipes, who was one of the biggest stars at the time, but the fact is that he had a car that was he was basically like vampire Batman. He was just cool. And that's the Marvel Universe from when I was a kid. Now, of course, you got stinkers like Steel with Shaquille O'Neal, and Meteor Man. There were a lot of those type of low-grade superhero movies when I was growing up. But there was no shortage of diversity. When it came to women, you had Sarah Connor, Ripley from Alien. There was a plethora of different ideas and genres and franchises that incorporated so much more. And people back then were allowed to at least test the boundaries of these ideas. Terminator. Is it the first time that anyone had heard a story about robots, destroying humanity? No, of course not. But it had its own spin. And Sarah Connor was an amazing character. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because that creativity is completely gone. It's been snuffed out. And what it's been replaced by is this new corporate wokeness that is as boring and predictable and just subversive, and not in a good way, as anything that I've ever seen. And so you get this Amazon show that should, by all metrics, be one of the biggest shows of the year. Something that eclipses everything else. Something that, with the money behind it, can generate more profit and more interest and more everything to Amazon and to Lord of the Rings. But instead, people are laughing at it. People are mocking it. Because, and we've seen from the recent picture of young Sauron who looks like Stan from that Eminem song. You remember that? Do you remember that? Did I just age myself? That's what he looks like. So you have these terrible screenshots that are being released, which I never would have done. Never, ever would have done. Keep it extremely close to the vest. If there's a scene like this, you could make it work, but it's got to have the right atmosphere. It's got to be like on Mount Doom, or, it's got to be in a way where the lighting and the effects makes it so that it looks really cool, where you get a small glimpse, an instant view of young Sauron. But they've released this picture and they just put it out online, and it looks terrible, and it's embarrassing, and it's yet another thing that they've done, another blunder to make people lose interest. For the amount of money that they spent, you'd think that they would hire people who know what they're doing, but nobody seems to know. And there's no leadership, and there's no vision, and what we're left with is a facsimile, a fraud, a phony, a pretender. And this imposter is trying to define itself as the official Lord of the Rings experience. They're trying to introduce the Harfoots. They're trying to introduce elves that are black, dwarves that are black, and women. And they're trying to do it in a way that is almost antagonistic, saying, I dare you to criticize this. Well, okay, I will. And so will a lot of other people. And the moment that you try to use the media to push people away, you've pushed away a large portion of your audience. Then the people who are left, you're decreasing them by the day with these releases. So at the end of it, this show is going to come out. Maybe 2-3 million people are going to watch the first episode, maybe a little bit more. And then because you don't have the foundation, because you don't have the fan base, because you don't have the things in place to capitalize on it, it's going to decrease by the second episode. And then it's going to decrease again, and it's going to decrease again. Now, I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not, a magician here. I'm not looking into a crystal ball. But everything that they've done has led themselves to not being prepared and ultimately producing something that doesn't have the ability to stand up to what has come before and has no desire for something that comes after. You would think that Amazon would have learned from Star Wars. You see, Disney will never admit that the Star Wars sequels were garbage. They were dog shit. They'll never admit that. But there's a reason why Disney is not making more movies for the time being, and hasn't for a while. Because they realized that it was absolute dog shit. The movies were trash. And they did serious damage to the IP. Irreversible damage. Killing off Luke Skywalker in that humiliating way. You can't undo that. Even with a retcon, even if they scrapped the garbage sequels and made them again and Luke Skywalker was the hero, the damage is done. And that's the thing here. You have these corporations and these narcissistic woke imbeciles that have no creativity and no passion and no dedication to anything other than themselves, working to erode these franchises. And nobody's creating anything new. Nobody's creating anything new. At least not of substance or quality to replace what's being damaged. I can't think of a single, like for example, Lightyear. Disney's Lightyear. woke garbage, a terrible story. Now, the story itself was bad. Injection of identity politics and, LGBT messaging and going above and beyond to make that particular movie about something other than just Buzz Lightyear fighting Zurg and the alien forces and all of that. Making it about something other than what it should be, which is a simple, dumb, fun, kids story that's bright and colorful and has a little bit of humor for adults, but mostly humor for kids, like Toy Story. Something that can be enjoyed by everyone. It should basically be, that movie should have been the back of the Buzz Lightyear action figure box. That's what it should have been. How did Buzz Lightyear get so popular? Well, this is the official canon. Never in a million years would Buzz Lightyear, the toy, the action figure, get popular based on that shit movie. Here, I think it's time for another drink. Oh, that's nice. Nice and cold. Yeah, I wanted to do this in a more laid-back setting, Not going to be as many edits and maybe, some more noises in the background, but what the heck, it's good to just talk about this stuff and get it off my chest because it's frustrating. It's like I don't want any of these movies or franchises to do poorly. I really like them to do well. And it's so easy. I mean, it really is easy. If these people came to me and are like, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's what I want. I want to have more diversity in the show. I want to have a lesbian in the show. I want to have this and this and this. There are ways to do it. And do it intelligently and respectfully and get everyone on board. Everyone on board. There are ways to do it that are endearing and will win you more fans in the end. But inevitably, always, these narcissistic imbeciles, these petty, vindictive losers go the spite route immediately and start insulting people and start beating people over the head with messages, and there's no subtlety, there's no grace, there's no build up. It's like, here it is, and if you don't like it, you're a bigot. Well, do you know what people are going to do when you present it in that way? They're going to shut it off. And they're not going to want anything more of what you're selling. Meanwhile, in Japan, manga and anime do all sorts of interesting things that you would really not expect. And it goes over just fine with the general audience. They don't mind. They don't mind weird stuff. I've seen anime and stuff like that have things that I look at and go, oh, that's not for me. But people enjoy it. They like it. And it's how you present it. If you present something well, if you do it in a way that shows respect for the audience and for the material, people are willing to accept and tolerate a whole heck of a lot. But this show shows none of that. It doesn't come with respect. It doesn't come with understanding. It doesn't come with an appreciation for the source material. It comes with a chip on her shoulder from these people that demand that you like what they're doing, or else. Well, my response to that is the same response as many people. I'm just not going to watch your stuff. I'm going to watch something else. I'm going to change the channel. Doesn't have to be this big protest. Doesn't have to be this big up in arms. Doesn't have to be going out of your way to, we're going to boycott. No, I'm just going to tune out and watch something else. And ultimately, all the money that was poured into this, all the time and effort will be for nothing. Because you cannot run a business paying millions or billions of dollars to acquire franchises and to pay to have those be created and produced and make it for the 100 or so entertainment media so-called journalists and the 5 or 12 people on Twitter that like this crap and the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of bots that say that they like this stuff. There's a reason why Hasbro tried to crowdfund a Reva lightsaber and didn't even come within a third of their crowdfunding goal. Not even a third. Hasbro, with the backing of Disney, couldn't generate enough interest to crowdfund this. Embarrassing. They have all the money, they have all the opportunity in the world, and yet they think that they don't need the audience anymore. They think that they don't need the fans. They think they don't need artists and creative types. They think that the only thing that they need is the message, the politically organized and orchestrated message. Well, I'm here to tell you it doesn't work now and it never will. The only thing that stuff does is date your movie. It makes it incredibly dated. And so when this current political system becomes unfashionable in a week or a month or a year, people will look at your content and say, wow, that's really embarrassing. So my advice is to pour your money into making things that are timeless, that the fans want. Do not approach anything resembling politics unless it's the politics of that world. Do not presume to know better than the original creator. You know, it's like, well, what's the big deal about, turning an elf black? Well, what's the big deal? I mean, it's just, it's an actor playing a role. That's true. It's just an actor playing a role. But the creator had a vision. And that vision makes sense to the world and makes sense to the audience because of how it's told, because of how intricately it's told. When you pull on a string, even one string, it can unwrap the entire tapestry. And the storyline that could be intricately woven over chapters and chapters and chapters and pages, and the world building and the lore, it can be undone. And you think, well, you just don't want, I know this is the knee-jerk response, you just don't want black people in Lord of the Rings. Which is absurd. I mean, absolutely absurd. One of my favorite actors is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So, it's not on the basis of race, clearly. So what else could it be? Nothing that these people have an answer for. Because they don't understand. They don't understand that it's about quality. It's about content that is accurate as much as it can be to the source material. Doesn't have to be 100%. Doesn't have to be completely faithful. But you have to get the basics right. And if you're not able to do that, then either save your money or spend more to get somebody who knows what they're doing. Man, that picture really did make me laugh, though. That Stan from, the Eminem song. I mean, look at that. Look at this. I mean, it's embarrassing. This is not... If you told me that this was like a low-budget Hercules, the legendary journey, type of show, I'd be like, okay, I get it. But the amount of money they're pouring into this, it's not even remotely close to Peter Jackson. And the budget is comparable, so don't tell me that, it's screen and big screen, silver screen, big screen. No, it's the budget is ridiculous. They could afford, for the 8 hours, they could afford some stuff for the price they're paying. Some good costumes, good set design. They could afford it. They're Amazon. Anyway. Yeah, I've wanted to talk about this. Haven't really had time. Construction is a hell of a thing. I know Jeremy from the Quartering is building something. I invited him onto the show to have a conversation about construction and coffee, but, he ignored me, of course, because I'm a small YouTuber. And, anyway, I'll try to find something more interesting to talk about next week. But I think this show, at least for me, is dead on arrival. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are you going to give it a chance? Do you think that I'm overreacting? Just let me know in the comment section below. It would really, really help out the channel if you subscribed. Leave a comment in the section below. It does affect the algorithm and stuff like that. And, you've heard it all before. Anyway, I want to thank you sincerely. And I will see you all next time.